drawn and redrawn, the making of India's internal boundaries.
Hi, and welcome back to India's State Stories, a project that explores the evolution of India's political and administrative boundaries. This project is supported by the Center for Legislative Education and Research, Flame University, Pune.
In the last few episodes, we looked at the integration of princely states that were merged into their respective provinces and formed the Part A states. Now, we turn towards Part B states, that is, the states grouped together to form a viable union and were governed by a Raj Pramukh, a new constitutional position held by a former ruler of a state and appointed by the President of India. Along with these unions, some major states like Hyderabad, Jammu and Kashmir and Mysore state were also categorized into Part B states and governed in the similar manner by the Raj Pramukh. Let's dive into the fascinating history of formations of these unions and explore their individual stories in the following 9 episodes. Listen to the first 3 episodes of Season 2 to understand a deeper context. These episodes give an overview of the entire process of integration, along with an introduction to the legal instruments and some key personalities which made it possible. More details are in the show notes below, and let's dive in.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine, if you will, a vast, historically rich kingdom. One of the few that really held its own for centuries. And now it's faced with this monumental task, joining a newly independent nation. How does that even happen? Especially when, other states are facing unrest, really prolonged negotiations.
Right, that's the context. It's a huge challenge.
So today, we're doing a deep dive. We're pulling back the curtain on a pivotal moment in history. The fascinating story of Mysore state. It was one of India's largest, most significant princely states, and its journey into the Indian Union after 1947 is quite unique.
It really is.
What truly makes Mysore's integration stand out, I think, is how comparatively smooth it was, and the depth of its existing administrative and democratic foundations. We're here to explore exactly why that was the case for you today.
And it's not just about the smoothness, though that's remarkable. It's the sheer scale we're talking about. A state, this a large, huge population, considerable financial resources, its strategic geographical position.
Absolutely crucial.
Exactly. Achieving such a transition, given all that. While we often hear about the difficulties, the challenges of integrating the princely states, Mysore really does present a different narrative. It offers these profound lessons in state building, that go beyond just avoiding conflict.
So what's our mission today, then?
Our mission, I'd say, is to trace its long, really storied history, examine the critical phases of its accession step by step, and uncover the specific negotiations that shaped its destiny as, well, a key part of independent India.
Okay. To truly grasp how Mysore managed this integration, we need to anchor ourselves in its deep history first, right? Let's rewind a bit.
Good idea. Context is everything here.
This wasn't just any state. It was home to the Wadiyar dynasty, and their lineage stretches all the way back to 1399 AD.
Just think about that, 1399. Centuries.
Centuries of continuous rule. Now, okay, there's a brief interruption. 1765, Hyder Ali usurps the throne, then his son Tipu Sultan.
Right, the famous Tipu Sultan.
But the Wadiyar dynasty was restored in 1799. That was after Tipu's defeat in the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. But here's a really crucial detail, I think, for later context.
Okay.
From 1831 to 1881, so for 50 years, the British actually assumed direct management of the state. There was a rebellion, and they stepped in.
Direct rule. That's significant.
Incredibly formative, it turns out, even though it interrupted direct princely rule. After those 50 years, in March 1881, the state was handed back to the ruling family. Maharaja Chamarachandra Wadiyar was installed.
So the dynasty returns, but after a period of British administration.
Exactly. And that period of direct management, it effectively laid the foundation for a remarkably sound administrative system, something that would serve Mysore exceptionally well later on.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that half-century of British direct management was, well, transformative. It wasn't just keeping the seat warm.
No, not at all.
The British introduced, a modern bureaucratic structure. They standardized legal procedures, established institutions, basically streamlined governance in a way that was quite ahead of its time for many princely states.
Right? They built an actual system.
They built a system, an administrative backbone that many other princely states simply lacked. This pre-existing, strong, relatively modern administrative setup proved to be a huge advantage when integration came knocking.
So they weren't starting from zero.
Not at all. It meant Mysore wasn't starting from scratch, organizationally speaking. That profoundly impacted its readiness for constitutional governance, its ability to just slot in relatively seamlessly. It's a powerful example, isn't it? How these historical foundations, even once initially imposed, can ripple through future political development.
It really is.
Yeah.
So looking at how smoothly Mysore transitioned, it feels like a lot of that readiness came down to its leadership as well. Who was the key figure here? What impact did they have?
Yeah, leadership is critical.
Well, much of Mysore's inherent strength, its readiness for independence, it seems to come from one ruler in particular, Maharaja Sir Krishnaraja Wadiyar.
Ah, yes. A major figure.
Our sources widely describe him as the most distinguished ruler Mysore ever had. And, for good reason. He ruled for an impressive 46 years, right up until 1940.
A very long reign.
And under his leadership, Mysore made truly remarkable progress. It wasn't just wealthy, though it was renowned as one of the best administered states in the entire country.
Better administered than even some parts of British India, arguably.
Quite possibly. Pioneering significant industrialization, hydroelectric projects. Think of the Shivanasamudra Power Station, one of Asia's first major hydroelectric projects.
Incredible foresight. Infrastructure was key.
But it wasn't just economic stuff. Mysore also led the way in democratic institutions. It was the first state to establish a representative assembly way back in 1881.
1881, that's early.
Very early. And that evolved into a statutory body with an elected majority by 1923. They even had an upper house by 1907.
So, bicameral legislature developing?
Exactly. And here's a truly remarkable detail, something that always stands out to me. Under Krishnaraja Wadiyar, Mysore became the first Indian state to grant women enfranchisement.
Wow. Okay, that is remarkable. Before national independence, before many Western countries even?
Absolutely. He was succeeded by his nephew, Jayachandra Wadiyar, in 1940. And by the time of the transfer of power in 1947, Mysore already had a ministry responsible to its legislature. It effectively achieved full responsible government by 1949.
It's genuinely striking. Seeing reforms like women's enfranchisement happening in a princely state before national independence, it really makes you pause.
It does.
You have to wonder, how did Krishnaraja Wadiyar manage that? Pushing such forward-thinking policies, often against, the prevailing conservative attitudes of the time.
Visionary leadership, presumably.
Absolutely. His vision created a state that was, in so many ways, genuinely ahead of its time. This sophisticated administrative and democratic infrastructure meant Mysore was just well-equipped, ready for a modern constitutional setup, unlike so many other states that really had to start from scratch or build these systems after integration.
Right. It wasn't just rich, as you said.
Exactly. It reinforces that idea. Mysore wasn't just wealthy, it was profoundly administratively and politically advanced. It laid this robust groundwork that made the transition into the Indian Union much, much smoother. His foresight meant Mysore entered the Union not as a blank slate, needing everything done for it, but as a well-oiled machine ready to contribute.
Okay, so they got the history, the administration, the leadership. Let's delve into the actual integration journey itself. Because as you mentioned, it happened in stages, right? Not just one single event.
Correct. A phased approach.
The initial session, that took place in August 1947, right at the dawn of India's independence.
The crucial moment.
At that time, the Maharaja of Mysore executed two key documents: the Instrument of Accession and the Standstill Agreement.
Standard procedure for many states, but vital nonetheless.
The Instrument of Accession, that formally declared Mysore's intent to join the Indian Union. Pretty straightforward. The Standstill Agreement, though, that allowed existing administrative arrangements, things like postal services, railways, telegraphs, to just continue undisturbed for a transitional period.
Buying time, essentially. Maintaining continuity. Very practical.
Very. And this initial instrument, like those for other major states, involved ceding only 3 specific subjects to the new Dominion of India: defense, external affairs, and communications.
The core functions. The ones defined in List of 1 of Schedule of the 7th Government of India Act of 1935, the Federal List.
Exactly. Now, a crucial aspect of this first phase was that it didn't involve any financial liability for Mysore.
Ah, interesting. So, accession without immediate financial integration.
Right. It was designed, seemingly, to leave the rulers with all the practical independence they could use, without really encroaching on their sovereignty in other matters. Our source actually describes the relationship at this stage as tenuous.
Tenuous, okay. Like a holding pattern.
Yeah, exactly. But it also points out it was probably the only practical course available at that exact moment, a necessary first step. Then, things evolved. In June 1949, we saw a revised accession, a much deeper constitutional integration.
Okay, stage 2.
The Maharaja executed a new instrument of accession. Significantly this time, it was with the concurrence of his ministers, more buy-in.
Reflecting that responsible government aspect we talked about.
Precisely. And this new instrument, it dramatically broadened the scope. It granted the central legislature the power to enact laws for Mysore on all matters listed in both the federal and the concurrent legislative lists of the Government of India Act of 1935.
Wow, okay. So not just the big 3 anymore. Federal and concurrent list. That's huge.
It is. For context, the federal list is where the central government has exclusive power. The concurrent list is where both central and state governments can legislate. So this was a major shift.
The only exception being?
The only exception was duties and taxation. Mysore retained its own pre-existing public finance structure, at least initially.
Got it. But otherwise?
Otherwise, this development really placed Mysore in a constitutional position very similar to the former British Indian provinces, what became known as the Part A states.
So effectively under central legislative authority for most things, just like the directly ruled territories had been.
Exactly. But crucially, retaining its own financial setup for the moment.
A crucial aspect here, and one that's often overlooked, is that evolution you described. From that initial, maybe tenuous connection to full constitutional integration, it wasn't rushed.
No, it felt quite deliberate.
It really reflects a carefully managed 2-step process. State building and integration happening thoughtfully. That initial accession, it bought time, didn't it? Helped build trust between Mysore and the nascent Indian Union.
Yeah, a cooling off period almost.
While the revised agreement, that represented a much deeper commitment, placing Mysore firmly within the federal structure, very much like those former British Indian provinces.
And the local assembly played a role too, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We shouldn't forget the proactive role of the Mysore Constituent Assembly. It was established by a proclamation back in October 1947.
Okay.
And this assembly, representing the people of Mysore, it recommended that the constitution being framed by the main constituent assembly of the Indian Union should be adopted by Mysore.
So local ratification in effect.
A pivotal recommendation, yeah. And it was implemented by the Maharaja through another proclamation in November 1949. That Mysore Constituent Assembly then actually functioned as the interim state legislature until new elections could be held under the new Indian constitution.
So a smooth handover of legislative function too.
Very smooth. Ultimately, by January 26, 1950, when the new Constitution of India came into force, Mysore was fully integrated. It became a Part B state. Yeah, that was the category for former princely states that still had their own legislatures but were fully assimilated into the new federal structure. Its sort of unique status was largely absorbed by then, completing that whole journey.
Now, the real distinction, the thing that makes Mysore stand out, emerges when you put its experience next to some of the others.
Definitely.
Many princely states faced huge hurdles, popular unrest, prolonged negotiations, sometimes even military action. But Mysore's integration was, as our source says, notably smooth and easy, with very little change post-accession.
Which is remarkable given its size and importance.
So, what were the specific mechanics? What made it so smooth? Let's look at the merger agreement itself. One key feature was the privy purse for the Maharaja.
Ah, the privy purse is always a sensitive topic.
Always. This was that agreed-upon annual payment to the former ruler. Kind of a pension, really, ensuring their dignity, financial stability, maybe a gesture of good faith from the new government.
Right.
For Mysore's Maharaja, it was fixed at a substantial Rs 26 lakh per year.
26 lakh. That's quite high, isn't it? Wasn't there usually a ceiling?
There was. That's the significant point. It actually exceeded the standard Rs 10 lakh ceiling that was often applied to other rulers.
Okay, so why the exception for Mysore?
It seems to reflect Mysore's importance, its considerable state revenue, and just the unique nature of these specific negotiations. They were handled through direct discussions between VP Menon.
The key negotiator for the state's ministry.
Exactly. Between Menon and the Maharaja and his ministers, and Sardar Patel, the architect of integration.
Patel was keenly involved, you'd expect.
He was keenly involved, according to the source. And these privy purse amounts were guaranteed by the government of India. Later, with full financial integration, they became a charge on the central government's budget.
So a pragmatic solution tailored to Mysore's specific context.
It seems so. Another aspect that really smoothed the path was the distinction between the Maharaja's private property and state property.
That was a massive headache in some other states, wasn't it? Disputes over palaces, jewels, land.
Huge headaches. But in Mysore, apparently this distinction didn't pose significant problems. Why? Because it had been clearly established many, many years prior.
Since when?
Notably, after the restoration of the ruling family back in 1799, and then reaffirmed through various legal steps over the decades.
So that potential minefield was already cleared.
Exactly. That pre-existing clarity was a huge advantage. It removed a major point of contention right off the table.
Smart. What about the finances overall?
Well, Mysore adopted the overall financial integration scheme from April 1st, 1950. This meant pooling federal resources and functions with the central government.
Standard procedure for integrating states?
Yes, but its budgetary impact was managed without needing compensation for transferred assets, and it even included a transitional financial assistance scheme from the center. So all these factors combine the tailored privy purse, the clear property distinction, the smooth financial integration plan.
It adds up.
It really adds up to why, compared to many other states facing turmoil, Mysore's integration was genuinely considered smooth and easy, with very little change post-accession.
That leads me to think about the broader implications, What can we really learn from Mysore's smooth and easy integration, especially compared to states that saw unrest or even military action?
Yeah, what are the takeaways?
It profoundly underscores the power of that combination we've been talking about. Existing strong administration, visionary leadership, and crucially, highly skilled pragmatic negotiation.
It wasn't just luck.
Not at all. And something often overlooked is maybe the psychological impact of that pre-existing stability. For the people living in Mysore, it likely didn't feel like a sudden, chaotic disruption. It was more like a continuation of reasonably well-managed governance just under a new, larger umbrella.
Which would reduce the potential for unrest.
Radically reduce it compared to places where administration collapsed or was deeply contested. And that pragmatic approach with the privy purse going above the standard ceiling, it really shows the flexibility, the recognition of Mysore's unique status by people like Patel and Menon.
It wasn't about rigid rules, but the end goal.
Exactly. It was about securing the broader goal, smooth integration with minimal disruption, fostering goodwill. And as you just detailed, that pre-existing clarity on private versus state property, a massive advantage. It prevented a common source of conflict that plagued so many other accession processes. It really is almost a textbook case, isn't it? How proactive governance and smart diplomacy can prevent major crises down the line.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for us looking back? We've journeyed through centuries of history, we've seen pioneering progress under some really enlightened rule, and explored this careful, almost choreographed dance of accession and integration for Mysore.
A remarkable journey.
From an ancient dynasty to a modern integrated Indian state, its story is genuinely one for the books. A testament, really, to forward-thinking leadership and strategic negotiation. Mysore's established administrative system, its progressive leadership people like Krishnaraj Wadiyar, and that meticulous, pragmatic negotiation process.
It all came together.
It allowed for a remarkably smooth transition. That's what sets it apart from so many other princely states that faced far greater turmoil during India's birth pangs. It's a powerful reminder, I think, that stability is often built on strong foundations, not just on reactive measures.
Well said. And Mysore's experience teaches us a broader lesson, perhaps, about nation building itself. It's not just about the grand declarations, the sweeping political statements.
It's in the details.
It's absolutely in the intricate details of administration. It's in the foresight of leaders to build modern institutions before the crisis hits. And it's in those nuanced negotiations that respect historical realities while still forging a new path forward. And it kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? How many other smooth and easy transitions, driven by similar factors, good governance, pragmatic diplomacy, might have been overshadowed, overlooked in history because the more dramatic narratives of post-independence integration tend to dominate the record.
It's a really interesting final thought. We focus on the conflicts, maybe.
We often do. It encourages us, maybe, to consider how the legacy of states like Mysore, with their unique developmental paths, their well-established systems, continues to shape India's federal structure and regional identities even today, quietly influencing everything from administrative practices to, regional pride. Something to mull over.